great to be with you again. And with everything that's going on in our world, we're marching forward because if we can't
Yes,
see each other in person, we're going to see each other via Zoom or this
right.
amazing media source. So great. Tell me, I hope you had an amazing New Year and Christmas.
Yes, everything was wonderful. By any means, it was definitely quiet, but it was very nice to be with family. And I had a chance to FaceTime some friends and send text messages. But I think we're all in the same boat. You know, we can send our love and make those connections in other ways.
Right.
So far it's been fantastic.
Yeah. And you and I've talked about so much. If we know why we want something, the how and the what will show up.
That's right.
So
Yes.
I know your commitment to family and community. And that's, one of the reasons I wanted you to be part of the Brain Science Symposium is this year we are talking about blue zones, the blue zone research, which is so relevant to living longer, but not only just living longer, living healthier. Because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how long do we want to live? And you and I've talked about this before. We wanted to live as long as it's healthy and it's
Mhm.
happy. I mean, who wants to live longer if we're not healthy and happy?
Exactly.
So, one of the things that the Blue Zone research talked about is people that lived longer and healthier lives were really involved in community. They had community, they were connecting, and I can't think of someone better to talk about how do we build a sense of community for ourselves and I mean like what is that like? How did you do that?
Well, I think my beginning was definitely watching my mother and her dedication because her job at the many years ago when I was probably in elementary school dealt with visiting families that were in trouble. They had some of them had lost their children, some of them had just gotten their children back in the home. Others were just struggling to, you know, they needed help from the state and she was there to guide them. And the thing was is those families got to see my mother as a single parent. Sometimes she had to take me along. So I sat and listened to the advice, to everything that was sort of scripted by the state and the recommendations. And that sort of got this feeling inside of me going. Like it was just necessary to take care of others in the community. And I taught that to my boys. You know, now they're 17 and 30 years old, and they each serve the community in their own way. But I have found that if there are days that I don't feel good, if there are things that, I just feel kind of this slump, so to speak, volunteering or going and helping someone really fulfills this sort of need that I have that I mean nothing in the world matches that. And that motivation that I get out of it. So, and which is kind of funny because I actually kind of consider myself an introvert. There are days where I don't want to talk to anybody and I need my downtime and I'll just stay in the house or do some things around the yard. And that's a different sort of, contribution.
And so Christy, what I hear, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard, first of all, um, we're already talking about this subject, and I don't know if everyone knows you. Please tell us a little bit about what you've done, where you're at right now, so we can get some context of who are you.
Okay. So currently, I'm a business owner, a small business owner. My husband and I started a contracting business, and it's really tough, but we've enjoyed every minute of it. Prior to that, I was the president of the West San Antonio Chamber. And over my lifetime, I've taken a lot of lead volunteer roles. I've between here in San Antonio and down to Corpus Christi. I've taken on all sorts of things. It's really just something that I need to feed the soul. And a lot of that has been in public relations, marketing, and government affairs. So it taken me into meeting different people.
Right.
And I meet one person and then they connect me with someone else. And later on, I'll tell you a little story about a project I'm taking on in the next couple of weeks. And it's unbelievable how it makes me feel and how I've been able to sit down and really journal some of the things. And I know it's going to help other kids, like university, I call them kids, to also take on their own volunteer roles as they grow and learn and do other things.
Christy, so the research shows us that people that have a sense of community are living longer.
Mhm.
But you refer to feeding your soul. Tell me about that. What do you mean by feeding your soul?
Well, so I never knew. I was just very typical small town girl. And I knew that we took plates of food to people when they were ill, or if someone needed help moving or doing something. I mean, we did that. That was just part of what our family did. And we
Mhm.
took care of our elders. But there was a moment of self discovery where when things were really bad for me as a single parent and I wasn't working and just I was ill at the time. This was in my early 20s. I almost died because of pneumonia. And here I had a 2-year-old child and I was pregnant at the time. So I was going through a lot of distress. And with that came anger. But
Yeah.
then I'd have these moments of, well, I've got to help my neighbor. That's kind of a duty that I have. But I'd walk away from small little chores with such a renewed feeling. And
Wow.
then the more I looked within, I realized that was a huge key for me. That was feeding me. That was the nourishment that I needed to take on something bigger and something better. And it was just an experiment, really, a
Right.
personal experiment in my little world where I would help my neighbor
Yeah.
and then I'd go out. I went out and I looked for a job and then I'd help someone else. And then I went and got back into school. And it really surprised me about the correlation. It was my brain was recharged, but it was a slow process. This took years and years,
Right.
but it was so good. And to this day, I've not been able to match that. Yeah. And sometimes I say, oh, I don't, gosh, I got to get up early and there's so much work to do. But I know that once I get there, and once I see everybody, and once I share a story or two, or they share it with me, there's such a fantastic exchange.
Yeah.
It- and it feeds that soul. It
Yeah.
feeds my soul and theirs.
And I've seen you when COVID first started. You were there outside, getting out kits
Mhm.
and sanitation supplies to business owners. And then I've seen you put events together that inspired large groups of women. And it was like I couldn't keep up with you because you were like in a flow. You're just going, and
Mhm.
we were wondering how you were juggling it all, but there was this intrinsic motivation. So are you telling me I need to quit my job? Because a lot of people, like, they join
No.
their church and then they have their jobs, but you seem to have brought it together. Where you did
Yes,
the job
and
and
it's tough. I'm not gonna and definitely don't quit your job, but if you only take on one thing, join a church group or volunteer for the city or take on one thing and figure out if you like it. I use a general rule where I give myself 6 months. So even if I'm only attending once a month, I still give it 6 months to see if I like it, to see if I like the people around me. And you got to remember, they've got to contribute to you just like you contribute to them. So we can use an example of helping the homeless.
Mhm.
There are some very interesting stories when you go and you feed the homeless or you take care packages. And what it doesn't matter if you go with a church or some other group. When you make contact with that person, you may think, well, it's just somebody who lives on the street. Maybe they don't care about themselves, but it is so far from that. But
Right.
there's a degree of fear that comes with it. But once we are vulnerable and connect with them, you walk away a changed person. You walk away with a very different perspective on life. And
Yeah.
then that's something that you bring back to your kids. But I didn't, that's all I'm taking from, let's say, my pot of time is once a month I'm doing this project, and another month I'm doing another project. And that's it. I do have to be very careful because I'm one of those that has a hard time saying no.
Yeah.
So it just, what I do on my calendar is I lay out slots so that I can plug in an event. And then I backtrack to see how long it's going to take me to do that. Some take me, a year of planning, some take only a couple of months. Something I did just earlier this week is MLK Day. Well, I volunteered to cook at an event. So I'm going to a church where the march would normally start, and I'm going to make tacos. I did make tacos and serve coffee and juice, and that was something simple. It was a trip to the grocery store, and I was able to feed, I think it was 80 to 100 people that I had never met before. And it was nice.
So you're a really good example of how you volunteered first, and then from that volunteer opportunity, you got to know people, turned it into a job that you were
Mhm.
doing for a while, and
Yes.
then you took that what you had done with that, and then you moved on to another great opportunity. So I don't have to quit my job, is what you're saying.
No.
I don't have to become Mother Teresa,
No.
right?
Right.
So I could actually live longer, is what you're saying, by making a difference. Is that
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we see the world, so many things are happening between COVID and people losing their jobs. And the economy is so unstable. There's a lot that is weighing us down, and really just going and putting a basket together. I think that's one of the things that I've done at least the last 2.5 years, is to share the idea of, if there's nothing else you do ever, just get a couple of things together, some fruits and vegetables, a couple of cans of soup maybe, and go share it with your neighbor. We all have an elderly neighbor. We all have a shut in, a few doors down somewhere. You know, maybe it's that neighbor that won't wave at you. Just leave them a little something. And even if you didn't get a thank you or anything back, it gives you this magical power to just go do something else.
right?
And now the next day at work, you're going to feel better because that'll be in the back of your mind. You know, you'll take on something new. It's
Yep.
just one step at a time. And you taught me that. It's just one step at a time.
Well, what we've seen, Christy, is the rates of depression and anxiety are at their highest.
Mhm.
And what we're finding in the field of psychology is that it really was the isolation. It really was not connecting and seeing people. And I think you're a great example. It's so simple
Yes.
in a way. How we can prevent anxiety and depression
Mhm.
or creeping into feelings of hopelessness when we get outside of ourselves. And what I've been told, I know you've heard this before, when what I'm going to is bigger than what I'm going through, I will
Yes.
persevere. How is that true in your life? Can you give us an example how when you were able to focus on someone else or something else and it helped
Mhm.
you to get through something?
So this year, I'm about to turn 50, and I've been doing a lot more reflecting lately. I always do it, and I have done it since I was in my 20s because so at that time, I think during my biggest crisis, I can say I got a divorce. I was very ill. I could hardly walk. I was living with my mother and a 2-year-old, and I was struggling to just get out of bed each day. But my focus, I remember laying there and just saying, okay, what is it that's going to get me to move to the next thing? And and I think sometimes we're like some of the younger kids today say, well, my grandparents were really tough, and they use that negative reinforcement to get you to do things. And I can attest to that. That's very true. I remember my mom sitting down with me at that time saying, whatever it is that's going on with you, you need to pull yourself up by those bootstraps. You need to get yourself together for this child. And she would show me my 2-year-old who's now 30 and say, it's this. Your child is what motivates you to do more. And if it's not your child, it's because there's a whole world out there that needs you. And she understood that dynamic of connecting with other people, even when we didn't feel like it. And when I focused on that, it's every day I would look at him and say, well, he needs me to get up and go find a job and go do that next thing and provide and help him learn to navigate the world. He depends on me. And, I realize we all want to be loved and we all want to be wanted, but you can't do that by laying in bed. You can't do that in your room or in your house doing nothing.
Yeah.
You've got to get out there in the world and figure it out. And even those of us who are a little more awkward or a little more nerdy, there is a place for you. There is a place for all of us at any given time. We all need each other. And that's how we get it back together, get back on that right path. And that's something that I continue to teach my kids today and others that I'm around.
So what I hear, and the research actually would agree with you 100%, is that as I get more involved in community or I just take on volunteering here or there, or even at my job, if I look for making a difference, whether I'm mopping floors or I'm, a rocket scientist, if I can find something that is bigger than me, some reason that will motivate me, so I know that I'm making a difference. Are you saying that that's actually going to heal me personally? Because right now, anxiety and depression are at record levels.
Yes.
So, are you saying that by getting outside of ourselves, and definitely, I agree, I think you said that it's an inclination to natural to want to pull in,
Mhm.
especially during this time.
Yes,
We want
absolutely.
to stay in. So,
Yeah.
you're saying that it could heal me.
No, absolutely. And I feel very strongly that that's how I was healed. Because, and I've described this to my staff, when there are debates, many of us, whether we're supervisors or we're running a company, you always have little bickering that might go on amongst your employees. And we all have to sit down and say, look, I don't know what your trauma is that you carry around. You carry around years of whatever it is that happened to you. And I carry my own trauma. And we have to come to some middle ground at all times. And it's hard to keep up. And it's hard not to kind of, we all get frustrated. It's hard not to lose it sometimes, but No one knows other than, now I'm saying it here, that I've had to experience the loss of a child. And I've had to experience the being alone and not being able to feed my children and not understanding how to figure that out. But when you reflect on yourself and add that commitment to community, because someone out there is going to help you get that next level job. They're going to give you that chance. But you can't do that unless you go out and look for it. So it's that anger. When I would volunteer, that anger that I carried around from the loss of my child and from other things that I experienced, there was some abuse through the years that I didn't know how to deal with. And we can all say that. I wasn't taught how to love. I wasn't taught how to do my finances, all those things. But we're learning, and we have to find our path. And through volunteering and connecting with others, we can find a happy space so we can be better people. So today I deal with it a lot differently.
Yeah. Well, and I hear also that by volunteering and connecting with people and creating community for yourself, right? Even if it's just a few people, it doesn't have to be a lot.
Right.
But by forming these little communities for ourselves, we might even open the door for better employment, for another opportunity that would serve us by serving others.
Absolutely. I would not be where I am today if other people had not helped me. And I would not have met those people if I hadn't volunteered. Many times that's where they've seen my work, and that's where they've had interactions with me. So it really does happen.
Right.
Right. And I know people are tired. There's folks that are working 12 and 15 hours a day for 6-7 days a week.
Yep.
But you have to figure out how to step back from that and go take some time for yourself. I had a girlfriend who, she was under a lot of stress, and I was very concerned with her. And I told her to start with just 10, 15 minutes to herself. Go lock yourself in the bathroom. Go take that bathroom time and let's make it into something different, and get the kids occupied. The husband is there. He can do something, and you just start. That's where the healing starts, is I believe within yourself. That little bit of time of just breathing and looking at your day, re-examining things. I mean, it's like cleaning out the pantry or spring cleaning, except we're doing it in our brain and for that nourishment of the brain and the body. And it really works. If I hadn't have left that anger behind, if I hadn't have worked to heal myself, then I would still be there today. I would be celebrating my 50th birthday with hardly anything, with no opportunity, with no friends, with no nothing. So I'm glad I made that change, but it's very difficult. And people do it through music, through art, through volunteering, all that sort of stuff. We need that. And we can see that our ancestors have shown that too.
Yeah.
They have shown it. They put that path there for us. If we look at our great-grandparents and their parents, what did they do? They did more than work. I have a lot of stories about my grandparents and great-grandparents, working on the railroad and just the suffering that they did, and, all of the issues with the oppression. But there were moments where their groups, where their villages, where their little communities got together and helped each other. And they said, well, I have bread, and Dr. Sunita, you have fruit. Let's figure this out. Let's work on it together.
Yep.
And that is how we start to progress as a community.
I love that. Because a lot of people will tell me, well, you're Dr. Punjabi, you've got the resources, and I'm just trying to stay afloat. I'm just trying to put food on the table. So what I hear is that even if we did something small, and I mean, we can still put food on the table, we can still have that sense of urgency to meet basic needs and still dedicate a little bit of time. And the other thing I heard is that you said it starts with yourself.
Yes.
To give to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because then you have something to give to others. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And it's a journey. I mean, we have to learn. That's why it's great, that you're around and you've shown us a lot of the research, and there's several others. I mean, it's as easy as looking it up on the internet.
Yep.
Just grabbing a computer or your phone and looking at, I mean, a lot of those videos that we put together, you and I talked about easy, no cost, low cost ways of giving back to yourself. And then as you start to progress and you're able to afford other things,
Yep.
then you can add maybe paid therapy, or you can add something else. It's all a progression. And many times we get impatient with ourselves and the resources we have at the moment, but it really does all come in time. It's hard to believe. It's one of those things that when you're a little further down the line in your progress, because we're always a work in progress, when you're further down the line and you look back, it's like you can kind of think, I'm glad I was more patient this time.
Yep. So just to summarize, today at the Brain Science Symposium, we've been talking about the 5 things that research has found people that live longer. What are they doing? What are the 5 commonalities? And one of them is having community, having a tribe. And so the current research is showing us that it's not just about living longer, but with the pandemic and everything that's going on, resilience, human resilience is down. So we're even talking about human resilience today with Christy. And to summarize quickly, Christy and I always use this example. How do you make this line bigger without touching it? Christy, do you remember?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
You got a bigger line next to it. So when what you're doing, when your purpose or your cause is bigger than your challenges, and right now we got some big challenges in the world, but when our purpose is bigger than what's going on, so when our purpose is bigger than the pandemic and all that pandemic includes, we will be more resilient. And it really is, how can we increase our life length, our happiness, our health, how long can we live longer and be more resilient? Thank you so much, Chrissy, for your time. Any closing comments?
Just want to remind everybody, if we don't evolve, if we don't look within ourselves to grow and learn and do something different, we're destined to repeat again and again the misery, the loneliness, the lack of resources. We have to evolve and get out there and talk to people. And maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a neighbor or a friend, but there's lots and lots of groups, lots of opportunities out there. You're not alone. You just have to step out of your comfort zone and do something. This is the time, 2022. It's our time. It's your time.
Thank you so much, Christy. Thank you for those wise words.
Thank you.
Everyone, this is the Brain Science Symposium. This is Dr. Sunita Punjabi, and we're about to come back. If you want more information on how to reach Christy, look at the bottom of this podcast and you will have information on how to reach this amazing woman and find out what she's up to and to be part of what she's doing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.